So my presentation is entitled How to Be Productive Without Losing Your Mind, which is harder than it sounds. And I know that Ric Flair is speaking after me, so I am watching the timer like a hawk. Please, nobody panic. I'm aware of the situation. So the first part of the talk is going to be basically all about productivity, how to find what works for you, and how to manage your time, which we're all so good at, right? And the second part is going to address a question that I get asked a lot, which is, do you think that I should go full-time freelance? So I can't answer that question for you. Only you can answer that question for yourself, but I'm going to help you figure out if it's right for you. So without further ado, let's get into it. I want to do a really quick introduction so you guys know who you're dealing with here. I started working at the HOTH in 2017. I was finishing up my MFA in Austria at the time. And you know how when you're in grad school you have that moment of panic where you're like, holy shit, I'm about to graduate and I don't have a job. I had that. So I had like a manic night where I sent out 20 emails to different SEO and content writing companies trying to find somebody that would hire me. And Rachel got back to me. So I started working at the HOTH then, and before that I had a background in finance actually, and so I had always struggled in my life to find a balance between my creative and my business professional side, and I was looking for something to make that happen, because I know, Anna, you said you work in the financial world, like, there's a whole lot of personalities that you really can't be around for too long sometimes in that world, especially doing what I was doing in New York. So I just burnt out, and I wanted something that would allow me to be more creative. So with that, you can read a little bit more about me, and I know that I'm definitely a girl you've called a bitch in your head at least once, and you're absolutely right. I am a huge bitch, and I know like I can come off as ultra competitive, but I also have a heart of gold. So if you ever have any questions or want to talk to me one-on-one, DM me on Slack. I will not speak to you until after 5, though. So I do want to talk to you about what I consider the golden rule of productivity. If you only remember one thing from this presentation, which is very likely, I really want you to remember this. Please don't worry about anyone else's writing or don't follow their routine blindly. Just do whatever works the best for you. So if you're like, you know, it's 12 o'clock and you have your internet tab open and you're like reading about Ernest Hemingway's insane alcohol-fueled writing style, I would recommend that you not try that. Just because it worked for him does not mean that it's going to work for you. However, this means that you do need to kind of sit down and take the time and figure out what works for you. Again, I'm really sorry about the slide color of this. It's not going to be, the rest of the presentation won't be like that. So, that being said, let me contradict myself, and here's some advice about how to be more productive, more prolific, and spend less time hating yourself for wasting half your day on the internet doing nothing, like you probably did in 2018. We do not want anybody to end up, for a variety of reasons, like the Biebers. So I think like anything that we can do to avoid that is always positive. So I want to encourage you to try some of the things that appeal to you here, and go ahead and leave the ones that don't. You're not obligated to follow this blindly. Because remember, it's really important to keep in mind, nobody knows your working style, your lifestyle, your budget, your current financial situation, your goals better than you. Nobody else is going to be able to define that for you. So take what works from this, leave the rest. This is not a, if you don't do this, you're gonna die and you'll be fired. So everybody calm down. Like Cardi B, who is also, what I've heard recently, an excellent dog walker. Great woman for a variety of reasons. I really love money. I love money, and I also live in New York City, so if I don't make a certain amount of money, I will not be able to pay my rent, and I will in fact die. Unfortunately, you cannot make a 45-minute presentation talking about, well, the only way to be productive is live in a city that you can't afford. But I mean, that is like 98% of it. However, we're here to talk about the 2%. I love, if I don't work my ass off, I am not going to be able to do anything other than just sit in my apartment and complain about my situation to strangers on the internet, which I do still do, and I encourage you to do the same. But part of being a successful freelancer is getting extremely comfortable with the idea of being self-reliant. And I know that we work for the HOTH, right? Many of us work for the HOTH. You may or may not have other clients. But at the end of the day, you are the only person who is in charge of your productivity. You control how many articles you write a day. You control how many hours you work a day. You even, some of us, I'm working on it, control your spending habits. It's been hard for me. But so you need to work in order to take a vacation. You need to work in order to get your debt paid down. For some of us that have those MFAs that Rachel and Ben mentioned earlier, we might carry a little debt from that. And you need to most of all work in order to be able to enjoy life. So I want you to just start small and prepare for setbacks. When you're having a good week, I recommend that you ride out that train of productivity for as long as possible, because whether it's a family emergency, you're getting sick, or you're just facing burnout, eventually there will come a time when you throw up your hands and you just say, I can't do this. You guys see me at the top of the leaderboard and hate me for it. But even I get weeks where I'm like, you know what, I just can't do this anymore. I cannot do this anymore. And that's normal and it's very healthy. So I encourage you to take breaks. And please remember that we are not blessed with traditional days off like most people are. It's great, and that's one of the best things about being a freelancer. I think all of us love having the ability to set our own schedules, but that means that you do have to work in order to actually take time off. Let's see, please take advantage of the time that you do actually have available to work. Even if you wake up a little bit earlier in the morning one day, like let's not get on YouTube and slack off or read like your 90th BuzzFeed listicle. Let's actually get down and do an article so that you can go out and have fun later. And please do remember that it does get easier. Bye, Cardi. Slide 6, it's simple physics. A body at rest tends to stay at rest. Me and Bill and I walking you through this together. So my old boss used to say this all the time, and I thought it was the stupidest thing I had ever heard in my life. He would be like, a body at rest tends to stay at rest, Katherine. I'm like, whatever, Steve, I don't have time for you. But then when I started working freelance, I realized this is really, really true. So if you're just sitting around in your pajamas, I beg you, please get up and get dressed. I know that it's really hard. But if you don't, first of all, your partner is going to be walking through the door at 5:30, and you're still going to be in your PJs, and that's really not hot. It's not good for your marriage. And sometimes if you feel yourself start to mold into the couch, one of the best things to do and also the hardest things to do is just stand up. I'm not just talking about like in the mornings, wake up, get out of bed, make breakfast, because that's not always possible. But just give yourself a break, go out and get a coffee, even if you just leave your house for 10 minutes, because I often find myself, I get so panicked when I'm working that I think like, oh, I don't have time to take a 10-minute coffee break. I don't have time to go out and like run and do my groceries. Oh my God, I'm not gonna make any money and I'm gonna lose my apartment. And all of a sudden, like it's been 4 hours and I haven't done anything except panic. So I am officially giving you permission to take a break when you need it. And let's talk about step 1, which is leaving the house. When you hit a wall, which you will, I encourage you, and I'm giving you official permission to, create your own lunch hour, go for a walk in the middle of the day, read a think piece, which I really love to do, run errands from like 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock or whatever, work out, that's cute, right? Judge people on Tinder. I'm now in a relationship, miraculously, so I no longer have this activity available to me. So if anybody wants me to go through their Tinder profile, please see me. And then you can also watch an episode of The Office for the 10,000th time. All of these things are way better for you, for your mental health and for your productivity than just sitting around and worrying, which if you can't tell from my personality in the presentation, I do a lot. Step 2, set word count goals. Break it up, take mini breaks, and this is not applicable to 500 worders because, come on, pull it together. If you need to take a break for a 500-worder, you need to go see a doctor. So I found that, especially, we've talked about 2,000 worders, and now apparently we're being blessed with a 4,000-worder. So everybody listen up. Things seem a lot more manageable if I break up what I'm doing into chunks of 500, then I go into my kitchen, I make a cup of coffee, or I watch like a stupid YouTube video clip, and I'm not talking about like go and take an hour break between every 500 words. Let's all pull it together here. And then when I come back, I have a 1,500 worder, then a 1,000 worder, and then a 500 worder, and then I'm done, and that's the most math I've done in years. So I always feel like I have something that's much more manageable and that I can really knock out. So. Step 3, write intuitively. So one of the best things about freelancing is being able to set your own schedule. We've talked about how much we love flexibility already. The truth of the matter is that as hokey as it sounds, sometimes it really is all about listening to yourself and your body and your mood, and even especially your level of fatigue. Some days, you're just not gonna feel like writing. And no matter what you do, no matter how many times you try to reset, it's just not happening. This is a sign from yourself that you need to take a day off, or even just an hour off. We can't always take a day off. And also, you can adjust your schedule so that you can replace the time that you've lost later in the week. And I promise you, you're just gonna end up wasting more time if you try to force yourself to write when you're not in the mood for it, and you're gonna end up resenting your position and resenting everybody else in your family and resenting your friends that work a traditional 9 to 5 because they get paid to apparently like surf the web at the office and we don't. So it sounds like what you really might need is more of a day off. Hitting a wall. I love this quote. Rest in peace to David Foster Wallace. I think this is a quote that a lot of us can relate to because I see people typing about it on Slack. So let's read it together. I will, if the past experience holds true. I'll probably write an hour a day and spend about 8 hours a day biting my knuckles and worrying about not writing. And I think that sounds all too familiar to a lot of us. There's a definite anxiety around a lack of productivity, especially when that's tied up into the bills and responsibilities that we've talked about earlier in the presentation. So this is kind of where that cycle of stress starts. So when you start to feel the anxiety about being unproductive, the best thing that you can do is just to act immediately instead of just sitting around wallowing and worrying. Just pick an article and start writing. It's really not that hard. We do it every day. Just don't let yourself get into that mental space where you're just caught in like a time warp. Some other tips that I have found that work for me: switch up your environment. You can try hitting a coffee shop, going to the public library. I don't know if you have heard of them, but they are still in existence. Go to a friend's house or even try out maybe a co-working space. I know Ben was talking to me about that he tries co-working spaces. To me, like, I hate others so much that that's hard for me, but I feel like if that works for you, go for it. You can make over your home office and fill it with motivators. I mean, it's a little Martha Stewart, but I really do feel that it works. I have like pictures of destinations that I want to travel to. I have pictures of my family and friends, and what motivates me the most is shopping and clothing. So I'll put like pictures of clothes I want to buy up on my little inspiration wall and then go get them later in the week. So another thing that I like to do is just create a goal thermometer and then color it in because it's really satisfying to like make that little mark. It's like a tangible marker of success. It's great. Take breaks once you hit a certain monetary marker. For me, I take like a 15 or 20-minute break every $50 or every $54, whatever the hell 28 times 2 is. So for me, I found that that really works. And then embrace your competitive side, preferably with yourself or with a willing opponent, because we have a great and low-key, low-drama workplace environment here, and I think we can all agree we'd like to keep it that way. So if anybody wants to ever compete with me, you're gonna lose. But I would love to ride that train with you. So now, let's talk a little bit about defining your schedule. I'm just straight up curious. How many people here like to work at night? Show of hands. Okay, we got some night shift people. What about in the morning before your traditional job starts? Yep, yeah, a lot of people there. And what about, who are my weekend warriors? Any weekend warriors? And who works a traditional kind of 9 to 5? Wow, that's way more people than I thought. Wow, that's amazing. Okay, let's talk about now how to find a schedule that works for you. Please remember that consistency is key, especially when you get started. You're gonna feel like you can sleep in until 10 a.m. every day and that nobody is hovering over your shoulder and you can do whatever you want, and it doesn't work that way. So please try to be consistent, even if you have to push yourself really hard at the beginning. Creating a set schedule with room for normal flexibility, I promise, will make pretty much everything in your life better. Now, sorry, this slide's ugly. How to find the right schedule. If you live with someone else, whether it's a partner or a roommate, please consider how your schedule is gonna affect them. Get real about how it'll impact your relationship. It's really hard. If you're up till 3 o'clock in the morning writing, your partner works a traditional 9 to 5, and you never feel like you see each other. It's ugly, nobody likes to talk about it, but it happens. So please consider the people in your life when you're making your work schedule. And also consider the work schedules of your other friends, because we here at the HOTH want you to have a social life, and we'd like for you to go out. Make a day calendar, especially if you're one of the I write in the morning before work people, and then look for gaps within that current schedule where you can can squeeze in like even 1 or 2 articles. Last but not least, be realistic and please know who you are as a person. You are not gonna get up at 4 a.m. to write every day if that's not already a part of your personality. Maybe some people saw me bragging on Slack about how I was getting up at 5 a.m. That's over. It's over, it didn't work for me. And I want to talk about something super important as well, and Murray and I were speaking about this before I got up here to talk. This is a job, freelancing can be extremely isolating. And before you know it, you've been in your room for 1 day straight, 2 days straight, and the only person that you've talked to is like your coffee shop guy or girl. That's not a situation that you want to find yourself in, and it's really, really hard. And I found in my personal life, I don't mind telling you guys, I don't notice until it's too late. So I would say please be proactive and make sure that you get out, leave the house, start taking some vitamin D, whatever you need to do to stay healthy. So when in doubt, with our ladies, please try a traditional 9 to 5, and I'm thrilled to see that a lot of us have already gone this route. The best thing for me, based on my friend group and my level of insanity, is to mimic as close of a traditional work schedule as I can, because I do freelance full-time. And I also try to plan for traditional holidays. I find that saving time with my commute and not getting distracted by others and workplace drama usually allows me to finish much earlier than 5 p.m. If you're a freelancer, I think we know better than anybody that a lot of time is wasted in a traditional 8-hour workday. It is unbelievable to me when I hear people talk about what they did at work. We're not sitting around waiting for the next task to come in, especially with the HOTH when we have the portal, when things are good, we click it and then we go. So please, when you're setting up your goals, remember you're not doing this for 8 hours a day every single day. That being said, what you don't want to get into is a situation where now you're working 14-hour days because you failed to manage your time properly, which I can guarantee has happened to everybody else in this room at least once, myself included. So now let's talk about how to set different accountability measures so that you can continue to have a life and be happy. Let's see. Work ahead earlier in the week. Oh my God, because by the time Friday rolls around, I am not doing anything. As I have said here in this presentation, okay, I know myself well. So I find that everything feels much more possible if I have done over half of my goals before Wednesday even hits. I'm less overwhelmed. I can make plans for the weekend. So for me, I like to really hit the ground running on Monday morning. I usually get up earlier than I do any other day of the week, and I just start writing. And I knock out as much as I can before Thursday and Friday. And honestly, whenever I get stressed out about income, which I live in New York and pay New York City rent, so that's pretty often, I find that the only thing that mitigates that stress is just working earlier and working ahead. And also, I do want to make a plug in terms of the 9 to 5. Unless you already have a traditional job, I recommend advocating for your weekends with yourself. I usually do not work weekends at all. I'll answer the occasional edit because I really don't like having stuff hanging over my head when the week comes in. But if you do not take this time and get really precious and defensive about it, you're not going to have it, and then you're going to realize that you've just worked for 14 days straight. Take a full day off whenever possible, a full day. Schedule things in the evenings. Oh my God, this is so important. It's good for your sanity, being around others. It's a great motivator to actually get work done. And it's also an excuse to put on some real clothes. This is the most I've dressed up in like years. So it's also a good way to avoid that isolation that we've spoken about a little bit already in the presentation. These I just love, and I think everybody should have access to these at some point in their lives. These are freelance stickers from The New Yorker, and I want to encourage you to aim to do all of these things every day. And I promise, if you do this, things are going to get a lot more productive, easier, and you may even actually have a little fun. So I like the got paid. Everybody loves that one. Went outside. Great job taking the studio's notes or the client's notes, in our cases, gracefully. Remembered to eat. Went to bed before 1 a.m. I'm working on that. Followed up with the client. Client said, this works. And then what's the last one? I can't see. Oh, good behavior during a Skype session. Well, I guess that's important too. So physical activity. I am not a supporter of Chairman Mao, so everybody calm down. But we did have an amazing client in the past that had us write all Mao-themed content, so it can happen. So physical activity is crazy important for writers, and I find that there's an incorrect misconception that writers just sit like everybody is living the Johnny Depp and Secret Window life, where you're just sitting in a bathrobe, like eating last night's Chinese takeout. And honestly, the writers that I know are some of the most active people. Like Ben is an ultra marathon runner. Like, what the hell? I mean, I could never do that, but good for you. So breaking the stereotypes, Ben, way to go. Honestly, though, when I find that when I sit in my room all day, I feel physically ill. We need some sunlight. We need to move around. Nobody is expecting you to be Gal Gadot or Arnold Schwarzenegger, although that would be great for me. Physical activity does not mean like you're hitting the gym for 5 hours a day and you're pushing yourself and you hate yourself and you're trying to lose weight. It's just about finding something that works for you. Maybe you like stretching. Maybe you want to go on a walk with a friend around the block. Maybe you're into biking. Maybe you're into yoga. Or maybe you're doing some like weird meditation app, which for me is my personal version of hell. But you know what? It works for some people, and I think that's great. It's a strange and kind of hokey phrase to say, but it is a form of preventative health care, and especially since we buy our own health care, our own health insurance, most of us, it is kind of important to consider that. It's usually free, or you can find some free options, and it can help you to spend time in someone's company who is not a pet. So I usually go to the gym at about like 11 or 12 every day, and that's like when I've hit my wall, usually when I am at the $100 mark, for lack of a better word. I'll just go and work out for an hour, and I come back and I'm refreshed. I feel better. I feel less angry at the world. And so I recommend that everybody give it a try. Please remember that it's not about losing weight or getting in fabulous shape. And also, please remember your posture, because I don't want to see people at next HOTHCON and we all look like this. That's more of a note to myself than anything. Okay, this is probably the second, aside from the golden rule, the second most important slide in the presentation. Please be real. I'll do it later. Spoiler alert, no, you won't. When you tell yourself that you're gonna do something later, I want you to ask yourself, what is the likelihood of that actually happening? If you have things planned, are you actually gonna skip out on them to work? Especially if it's on a weekend? Are you actually going to be able to do quality work when you get home from a concert at 1 a.m.? No, because you're probably going to be drunk, so that's not a good idea. Are you actually going to skip brunch with friends, not go to that movie, or turn down that date? No, you're absolutely not going to do that. You're lying. We all know you're lying. You know you're lying. So please stop lying and just do it now. It's really not hard. Also important, learning to say no. I have listed it in numerous different languages, so whatever you speak at home, you no longer have an excuse for not saying no to people. Being a freelancer is amazing, can't say it enough, and I truly don't know, and it's funny because some of the earlier presentations mentioned this, I don't know if I could ever go back to a traditional office work environment after doing this, because we get spoiled. That being said, the biggest lesson that you're gonna learn as a freelancer that translates to all different areas of your life is how to say no. And I'm not talking about how to say no to clients, because sometimes, especially if you live in New York and pay the rent that I'm paying, that's not always a possibility. And if that's not a financial possibility for you, that's okay. The hardest thing about being a freelancer, I think, is saying no to the people that you love in your life. Because I find that inadvertently, people take advantage of your time because they don't work in a freelance environment, and and it's not their fault. They simply have absolutely no concept of what it is like to work in a job where your time is literally your money. They can mess around on the internet. They can go and take a doctor's appointment at 10 a.m. They can do whatever they want and slack off for a few hours, and they still get paid. They still collect a salary and they collect a paycheck at the end of the day. And that's not the situation that we find ourselves in, which is a blessing and a curse. So I think there's often a major disconnect between freelancers and the people in our lives that work more traditional jobs. And as a result, sometimes we get taken advantage of. Whether it's simple things like getting asked to pick up a package, oh, can you wait around for my package? To drop off the laundry because the laundromat's right downstairs, or, oh, the laundry's in the home and you can totally do it. Take out the dog, do some other household chores, just run errands. The people that you love often think, well, you know what, they're home all day, they can run out and do it, they've got an hour, I'm sure that they do. Here's what I do when people in my life ask me to do that. And then they don't talk to me for a month, and that's fine. I say, if you asked your boss if you could leave work at 10:15 a.m. to go to the grocery store, how do you think that conversation would go? And they usually look at me like I'm fucking crazy. And you can tell them that just because you work at home, that does not mean that you can automatically, ladies especially, just because you work at home does not mean that you can automatically shoulder the burden for the entire household. And it's also about getting people to respect what we do as freelancers. We all hear this bullshit that all we do is sit at, well, yeah. Damn right, respect me. So we all hear this judgments of like, I remember I was at the coffee shop last week and some guy said to me like, wow, I wish I had a job that allowed me to work in my sweatpants all day. And I'm like, well, it's Wednesday at noon and you're in a coffee shop, so let's talk. So there's a lot of judgment that we don't have a real job or that we're not really working. So I feel like when you advocate for yourself, you're actually advocating for all freelancers everywhere, and you're also just keeping a little peace in your home, which is always great. Please start by advocating for yourself in your time, then with the people closest to you, and then maybe if you're lucky enough, you can move on to saying no to clients. So let's talk about internet restriction apps. What are some websites that are appropriate and that people are willing to publicly admit to that you love to, because we all know the other ones, that you love to waste time on? YouTube, me too. Pinterest, Reddit, yep, I'm on my 90-day fiance threads. What'd you say? Yep, Instagram. So we all have those sites, right? We need the internet, of course, to be able to access our research sites, to check out what our clients are doing, and of course we want to communicate in our beloved Slack channel. But do you really need your Facebook or your Twitter or your secret Tumblr account where you're like having 10 affairs that I don't need to know about in order to be productive? If you're writing an article, no, absolutely not. There are certain apps, and I've listed some here, that you can use to restrict your time on the internet. And also, honestly, guys, it's a mental health booster because all I do when I get on the internet is like stalk my boyfriend's ex and think about how much better I am than her, and then just like compare myself to others and feel sad. So I think that it's a good idea to limit your time on the internet. So there's an app called HOTHCON, which limits both social media and texting, and it also gives you the ability to block calls, which I love. There's an app called Moment that helps you learn how much time you're on your phone each day, which is really terrifying to me. And then there's one that I use called Self-Control that allows you to limit access to specific sites for a set amount of time. Everybody be emotionally ready, though, because once you've set the self-control on, no matter what happens, even if a family emergency comes up, you cannot get back on the site for like the half hour or the hour, however long you've blocked the site for. So just know that going into it. Speaking of, we want to interrupt this presentation for an important conversation about mental health. So after you've finished alienating pretty much everybody in your life by daring to advocate for your time, you're probably going to feel a little guilty and sad. That being said, I think it's important to talk about mental health and another phrase that I think is really overused, but no less important, self-care. When I set my salary goals for the year, I automatically build in 2 weeks of vacation. I can take them consecutively or I can take them, throughout the year in little dots. But if I don't do that, I'm gonna lose it. Also, like I said, unless I'm working ahead, I always take weekends off. You do have to get extremely guarded and even a little mean about your time off, because if you don't, like we said, people are gonna take advantage of it. You cannot work anywhere at any time. You cannot be available anywhere every time. Please know how to set your boundaries. And also, if anybody is having a tough time mental health-wise, because like I said, we've talked about the fact that this job can be isolating, please know you can always reach out to me and talk. And I've seen people in the Slack channel saying that they're available for anybody that needs a mental health conversation. I think it's something that gets neglected a lot. Please ask for help. We all want you here. Very topical thing right now. So just a reminder. Also, let's see. If you are writing about mental health topics, because I know we have a lot of psychological clients and other like mental health pharmaceutical companies, there's a great thing called the Mental Health Media Charter that was created by Natasha Devon, and it talks about the appropriate way and a non-stigmatizing way that you can write about mental health topics. So, something to consider for sure. Lastly, like Lady Gaga and her limitless 100 people in the room speech, if I can do this, you can absolutely do this. It is so important to keep a healthy perspective. When I first started, I was so anxious all the time because I didn't want to mess up. I didn't want to miss a deadline. I didn't want to disappoint a client. All of these things eventually happened. And guess what? I'm still here, I didn't get fired, and I still got paid. Calm down, it's gonna be fine. The best advice that I've ever gotten was from the HOTH guidelines back in the day, and it said, just remember, what you think is an emergency is often not an emergency. No one is dying and no one is going to the hospital. So if you're new to the full-time freelance lifestyle, and we'll transition to that conversation in a second, I want to remind you that it gets easier. When I first started, I wasn't sure that I'd made the right choice because it's a lot of research and you're finding all these different sources and you're having all this data thrown at you and you're learning the formatting. But after a while, I started to get to know the clients. I started to get to know the statistics that I needed to include, and I started understanding and kind of memorizing how our formatting worked. So that's something that I just want to remind you of. It gets easier. So now for something completely different, part 2 of the presentation, the ultimate question, should I go full-time freelance? Anna Spooner in particular has asked me this question, and I haven't answered it until right now. It's been about a year. So I'm right on schedule. Real quick, put your hands up if you are full-time freelance right now. Me too. What about if you've ever been, or if you're thinking about it and you're kind of on the fence right now? We got one person. Great, this presentation is for you.
But I did go full-time freelance.
Well, perfect. Well, then I guess everybody just get on your phones for the next couple slides. But I do think that in terms of sustainability, even if you're doing it right now and you're not sure if you can do this forever, I can't give you a set answer to this question because it really is about knowing yourself, and know that if it's not okay for you and if it doesn't work for you, that's fine. You really have to have a little bit of the right type of a personality and very strong self-assessment skills to figure that out. So question 1, what's your why for going full-time freelance? And Rachel and Ben already spoke about this. We heard some great whys earlier. I can share some of my why if that's helpful. My parents are a little bit older than most, and this is being filmed, so I'm gonna need you to cut that part so my mom does not see that I've called her old. So I know, and I'm an only child, so I know that eventually I'm gonna become a caretaker. And I will probably have to leave at the drop of a hat. And my parents are really important to me, so not to say that, you know, people that don't care for their parents don't love their family, but I'm literally all they have, and they're getting old. So I need the flexibility, again, cut that. I need the flexibility that offers. Also, I know myself, I have good drive and I have good motivation, and I work best in an isolated environment where people just leave me alone, let me do my thing, I will deliver it, I can't answer your question right now, leave me alone, and I promise I'll be productive. I can't have someone like tapping me all the time. Also, I have had lots of experience working in a commission-based job, which is kind of, in a way, freelance, if you think about it, in the past. So I was comfortable with that eat what you kill mentality, which is super important. And I also like writing, and I think that's something that a lot of us tend to overlook. If you like what you do, if you enjoy what you do, if you like learning about new topics, then you're gonna love this job, and that's pretty rare. And also, if you are insane, like I am, this might be a good job for you. Question 2, financially, is this the best time for you to go full-time freelance? Because as much as we love this, we don't want to, you know, have that issue all the time of a shocked look when we check our bank accounts. So you may truly hate your day job more than anything in the world. I have been there. But especially if someone other than yourself, your family members, your children, whoever, is relying on your current income, you really need to get real with yourself about whether or not this is the best time for you to go full-time freelance. That doesn't mean if it's not now that it won't be in the future. There's always tomorrow for some people. But if it's not happening right now, that's okay. Look at your savings account. Talk to your partner about expenses and outline your own, create a little budget. I just did that, I almost died. I had to have like 90 Bloody Marys to calm down, but we did it. And also important, please consider how this might affect your health care, especially if you have a family member with a little bit more of a complicated condition. People often really don't like to talk about finances, but I'm from New York, where like everybody's first question is how much money do you make a year, and the second is how much are you paying in rent. So I'm a big believer of just getting it all out on the table. Also consider if a side gig is right for you. Like I am an ESL tutor for an amazing child. She's my little side hustle, but she's so cute. So if you can take a side gig just to like have some fun money, I call it, I highly recommend looking into that. Also, in terms of the HOTH, I want you to remember we get paid once a week, and I want you to remember that that paycheck is not going to be on the same amount every week. I need you to be emotionally and financially prepared for the fluctuations in pay based on QC, and also, we've all been the victim of a deficit in the article queue. Mentally prepare for that. It hopefully won't happen again in the near future, but it may happen again in the far future, so I want you to be ready. Now let's talk about question 3. What is your home work environment like? If it looks like this, you might have a problem. We all love kids. A lot of us here are parents. I am not because I'm an unfit parent. But for those of you that are, the truth is that a home with kids can be a pretty tough working environment for obvious reasons. The last thing that you want is to feel angry or resentful of your children or your partner for letting your kids run all over and disrupt your workspace. So as we mentioned earlier, think about a co-working space or even hitting the library. And again, this relates back to you defending your time and asking for respect for what you do. Also, remind your partner, male, female, it really doesn't matter, that just because you work from home does not mean that you are a full-time parent all the time. A good conversation to have. The same thing goes if you're living with roommates, especially if they also work from home. You know, those people that like knock on your room door because they're bored, but you're in a good work zone, but they have no concept of that. Avoid living with those people, if at all possible. Sometimes, like when I lived with roommates, I would put a sign on my door that said like Skype meeting. I was not Skyping anyone, I was lying, but they never, ever, ever bothered me. So if you have to get a little tricky, that's okay. And just try to enforce those boundaries. You know, let them know that when your door is closed or when you're working or when you're in a certain area of the home, like mom and dad can't come help you right now, please try to entertain yourself. Let's see. Question 4, what steps are you gonna take to prevent burnout? We've covered this, but I do think that it bears repeating. Okay, one of the most important slides too, for the love of God, before you go full-time freelance, please do a test run. Do a test run of at least 1 week before you make the jumps, before you make the switch. You'll learn if your personality is really right for this. You'll learn if you actually enjoy writing. You'll learn if you feel like you just simply have the time to make it happen. And you're also gonna learn about that isolation, whether or not you can handle it. You do not wanna figure out, after you've already quit your job, that you actually hate going full-time freelance. And I know people that have been in that situation and it didn't end well. So above all, it's super hokey, but know yourself. I wish I could say that there's an innate way to know if this is a good idea for you. The truth is, the best way to make this decision is by getting as honest with yourself as possible. If you are not good at self-assessment, like me, you can just ask the people in your life to tell you what they think and if they think you're actually capable of doing this. Above all, remember that your why needs to be really strong. It can't be like, oh, I hate my job, or oh, I just feel like giving it a go, or I want to take more vacations. It has to be like, I want to learn more about topics that I never would have found out about otherwise. I'm really competitive, and I like working with clients and getting them to the most viewed article for a certain topic. It has to be bigger. Are there any questions? I sure hope so. We have about 8 minutes and 24 seconds left.
Yeah, so you guys can run up to the mic again and make a line with your questions for Katherine.
Goodbye notes. All up here. Take it away.
So I don't know if there is a solution for my question, but
Get
one
a
of the
divorce.
things.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. No.
No, so my question is, how do you hold yourself to a 9 to 5 or whatever when there's really no reason to? Like, one of the things I find is I might get up in the morning and have a morning routine, and then technically this was when I planned to start working, but yeah, I don't know.
Right.
You know, so like there's no external thing saying you have to be at your desk at this time and this is what we expect of you. And I try to create that for myself, but there's no reason to stick to it.
So you don't have a consequence for not sticking to
I don't have
9
a
to 5.
huge consequence because I live in the Midwest,
Yeah.
and I am the only income in my family, which is stressful.
That's hard. Yeah.
But my husband is a supreme night owl. He's often up till 3 or 4 in the morning. And so a lot of times I just put things off, and then I end up working
Because
until
you want to be up with
2
him?
or 3 in the morning.
Or
No, it's more that I just don't want to get started. It's that
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's just, quit being a lazy bum, thanks a lot. Or if you have
I've
another
seen you in
thought.
QC. We know everyone knows you're not lazy.
Thank you.
But half the presentation is also find and do what works for you. So if you're unhappy and you're trying to like fit a round peg in a square hole, then don't do a 9 to 5. But I would also say, like, just try a week where you plan things in the evenings, whether it's like I'm going out with my husband and we're having a date night, or whether it's like I'm going to go meet with my girls and we're going to have drinks somewhere. Just try it and see if you feel better and if you can get more motivated in the morning. But some people cannot imagine getting up and working at 6 a.m., and I can't imagine working past 8 p.m. ever. So it's all about finding what works for you, Anna.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I was going to, my question is, you mentioned earlier that you kind of base your writing off of a salary scale. How do you do that? Do you break it down quarterly or?
Yeah, and I think I actually skipped a little in my presentation, so thank you. So I usually do a weekly goal, which is my main goal, and then I look at it monthly, and then I look at it quarterly, and I see where I am in relation to my salary goal for the year. So I break it down week by week. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
And do you choose your articles based on your salary goal? Like, if I want to.
No,
Okay.
I usually, I'll be real, like I'll talk numbers with you guys. I do $200 minimum per day.
Okay.
So sometimes it's a little more, sometimes it's a little less. And for some people, that's just, there's not enough hours in the day to get that done. For some people, they're like, well, this woman is like absolutely insane and is gonna burn out soon. But for other people, they're like, you know what, if I like rearrange some things in my life, I think I could do it. And everyone here can do it. Again, I have a whole bunch of problems and I can do it, so you can do it. So yeah, for me, I do daily, weekly, and then monthly, and then I do like a little mini evaluation quarterly.
Awesome.
Yeah, I hope that answered your question. Hi.
Hey, my questions, I've got a few that kind of tumble into each other.
Okay.
So I heard correctly that you write 20 to 30, is that?
No,
Oh,
it's
okay, I was-
no, God, no.
Wait, okay.
Oh my God, I wouldn't be here. I'd be writing. I'd be like, I can't speak
Right,
at this conference.
Right, but still you have, 200 per day is your goal.
Yeah, that's about
Right.
8,000 worders a day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So do you have do you only pick articles that you know something about, or do you challenge yourself with difficult ones? And do you have like a time period? So for example, for 500 word articles for myself, I break it down to 20 to 25 minutes. Like I put a timer, and that's
Yeah.
if I know my stuff on it. Like if it's skincare, but if it's like
Sure.
tractors, then I'm like,
Yeah, and I think I hope you don't think this is a cop-out, but I think in some ways you've answered your own questions. Like you can't set a time limit for yourself, and also you can't control what clients we're gonna get.
Right.
You know, you don't, as much as we wish we could. Like for me, I try to find articles that I think interest me. And some of the more super hyper technical stuff, I'm not interested, and I'm not gonna give the client
right.
what they deserve. No client wants you on your worst day, no client wants you when you're tired, and no client wants somebody that doesn't know what they're talking about. And that's not what we do here, which is why things like Blogger Pro are so great, so that we're gonna have opportunities in the future to make those types of connections. But no, I don't time myself in any way. I think but if that works for you, do it. If that's what keeps you accountable, do it. There's nothing wrong with that. So I'll try and look at what's available and make choices based on that. But part of this job is taking what comes at you and learning how to adapt. So yeah, I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, I was just wondering, because there are some of those articles that are super challenging, and
Yeah.
it's like that's all there is. It's all like 4X or something that I
Yeah.
know nothing about. And
Yeah, I've written
Yeah.
a couple of the 4X ones,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's like I need a drink afterwards or something. I need to relax afterwards. But again, there might be people in this room that are 4X, oh my God, thank God, that's
Right,
so
right.
easy for me.
Yeah.
So don't assume that's what they're probably not in this room. They're probably 4X trading right now. But so just remember that what is hard for you might be the most fun and easiest thing in the world for somebody else.
Right.
So
cool, thank you so
have
much.
faith in your fellow authors too.
Absolutely.
Hey.
Hello. So my question kind of is similar to what Michelle asked. It's when you're actually writing, how do you get motivated? How do you stay productive?
it's really tough. I mean, I am in a situation where like I depend on me and nobody else. So for me, like I think that's a great motivator. Is just live in a house that you can't really afford, but you're not going to give up. But also like I do plan things in the evenings. I do make sure that I have a social life, and I mean, I wish. This is why I say so much of going full-time freelance is a personality thing. Because you know yourself. If you have a really high drive and you're really motivated, you're gonna knock it out of the park, no problem. But if it's just not something that you're into doing full-time, or if you like just feel like eventually you're gonna burn out, there's nothing wrong with somebody not being as productive as me. In fact, it would be great, because then I could stay at the top of the leaderboard. But no, like your productivity is amazing. Don't compare yourself to others. My situation is not the same situation as yours. Our lives are totally different. So don't beat yourself up. You're doing great.
Sweet.
Hi, April.
So I have kind of an opposite question.
Okay.
How do you stop yourself from getting like money hungry? Like you said, you don't work on the weekends. So like, if you're like, man, I can make $200 a day. Like,
Yeah.
why can't I make $300 a day? Or because I find myself working on the weekends. I mean, not always, but I might be like, oh, I have like an extra hour. Like, let me get an article in. Not that that's always a bad thing.
Right.
But I think, do you ever like force yourself to like turn it off? Is it just purely selfishness? Like, hey, I deserve time off. Like, which is part of it, I imagine. But do you ever
Yeah.
find yourself like, I can make more money, kind of?
Well, for me, I find that like taking my boyfriend's credit card for a few hours is really no, I'm just kidding. No, so for me, honestly, like I am so productive during the, not to be like I'm so productive, but I work so hard during the week that I need the weekend.
Right.
I don't care about the money. I want to go
Okay.
out. I want to go out with my friends. So again, like plan something. You have kids, your kids want to see you. So I totally understand the idea of being money hungry and wanting to figure that out. But eventually, if you do that, you're going to burn out.
Right.
So pace yourself. It is a
Gotcha.
marathon, not a sprint.